5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And here come the midshipmen of Navy from Annapolis. And the FA 18 Super Hornets overhead coming out with their team. And from West Point, the Black Knights of Army. And the Chinook and Apache helicopters out with their team. For the win in double overtime for the Black Knights. Kick out of the way. It is good. Army wins. Fake to Samuel. Purdy rolling, throwing. Ayuk holds on, and he's got it for the touchdown. Purdy back, delivers, caught again. It's a first down. Jennings with a great move, and he's going to score.
Third down and about a yard and a half. Extra men on the rush. This one floated, caught by Chase, and he is gone. Touchdown Cincinnati as he takes it into the end zone.
On the move, he's going to run it, and he's going to come up big. Jalen Milrow, and he wisely hits the deck.
But I think Alabama's in the play.
They are 12-1. They're perfect against Georgia in SEC championship games.
You're listening to another edition of Sports Today with Peter J. Here's your host, Peter J. Mulroy.
Yeah, it's Army-Navy week, and that, outside of all the, excuse me, I'm getting over a little cold, outside of the real chaos that took place last week, and that's where we're going to start the show in college football. Outside of all of that chaos, we get to take a pause from it and really focus on one of the most meaningful games in all of sports each year, and that's the Army versus Navy game. Now, they'll play today for those listening live. And again, had some tech issues last night, so the show didn't air Friday at 7. It airs today in this noon hour, Saturday, December 9th. Thanks, as always, for tuning in. So Army and Navy are going to meet today for the 124th time. They're going to meet in Foxborough, Gillette Stadium, where the New England Patriots play. Navy leads the all-time series 62-54 with 7 ties. Both teams come in 5-6. Records outside the window for this one. I mean, this is a game, the pageantry, the significance of it. You heard Brad Nessler from a year ago where the game went to overtime, and it was a victory for Army in Philadelphia. And he talked about the flyovers with the Apache helicopters, representative of the United States military and everything it stands for. That's the best flyover, by the way, for any sporting event in the world. You get to see the two teams walk in, running in the stadium with their American flags. They do the march out for the Army and Navy, where they all meet in perfect formation, perfect symmetry, pregame on the field. There's nothing like it. Plus, you usually see a pretty damn good football game. President of the United States, I believe he'll be there today. President Biden, the U.S. presidents, if they can, are usually there. There'll be a ceremonial coin toss. It's great. Game will be at 3 p.m. Eastern time today on CBS. And it gives us a little bit of a break from some of the nonsense we've been dealing with in college football basically the last 7 days. So enjoy the Army-Navy game today, because it's really the last game we'll get before we get into bowl season, which starts December 16th. Personally, I like Navy in the game. Right? I think Navy will win the contest, end the season at 506-6. That would drop Army to 5-7. I think it's going to be a good one. I like the midshipmen. But that nonsense I'm referring to that we get a little respite from this week revolves around the college football playoff and the selection committee's infinite wisdom. You're going to get 2 damn good semifinal games. I'm not saying that. You're going to get Michigan, who's the number 1 team in the country, representing the Big Ten. They'll play Alabama out of the SEC champion. Semifinal 2 will be Washington, the number 2 ranked team in the country, the Pac-12 champion, and Texas, the Big 12 champion, ranked 3rd in the country. So you've got marketability there. big names, specifically with Alabama, Texas, and Michigan. We know Michigan has been in this tournament the last couple of years. They've become a mainstay in it. In this, the final year of the Final Four. The tournament expands, thank God, to 12 teams starting next year. Texas is no stranger to big-time football after winning its first Big 12 championship since 2009. And then Alabama, obviously the damage they've done come tournament time under Nick Saban. Washington's in the Final Four for a second time. First under head coach Kalen DeBoer, who deservedly so won AP Coach of the Year last night. But I think you all know when I reference that word, maybe it's our word of the day, nonsense, that we've been dealing with revolves around that selection process. It was a complete and utter disgrace that a Power 5 champion in Florida State, 13-0, ACC champion, went out of their way to schedule pretty damn good non-conference competition, namely starting the season LSU, and all they did was steamroll Brian Kelly's good LSU team, who, oh, by the way, contains Jaden Daniels, who tonight is probably going to win the Heisman Trophy. Florida State waxed them by 3 touchdowns to start the year. They run the table. And they run the table the last couple of weeks without their starting quarterback, Jordan Travis, whose college career ended with a devastating injury. Go to the ACC championship, knock off a Louisville team that came in ranked 14th in the country, I think, when the game was played, 16-6, with a third-string quarterback. Because Tate Rodemacher, who took over for Jordan Travis, was dealing with concussion issues. He wasn't cleared for contact, so he couldn't play. And they still win the game. They hold a Louisville team who was a top 28 offensive unit to 6 points. And they're able to win by 10 against the Louisville defense, who was top 30. A Louisville defense that's got a damn good resume after they basically manhandled Notre Dame 2 months ago at home. Florida State gets left out. And the thing that was so insulting, and people are afraid to say it, I'm not, I could care less. But I don't have to go. The beauty of doing a podcast like this, radio show, whatever you want to call it, I don't have to battle with the likes of the big guns. The thing that really, really pissed me off the most was how ESPN anchored that coverage. Now, the chair of the college football committee is a man by the name of Boo Corrigan, former athletic director at North Carolina State. So there's your ACC tie-in, right? You knew you could have a potential headache on your hand if a couple of things happen, and I outlined many of those things last week. What would happen if Oregon beat Washington in the Pac-12 championship? What would happen if Alabama beat Georgia in the SEC championship? What do we do now that potentially you'd probably eliminate Ohio State for already losing to Michigan and not playing in a conference championship game? But what happens if Texas loses? Texas is out with the second loss. But if Alabama beats Georgia, that happened, by the way. Now, Alabama's got the one loss, and they're an SEC champion. Georgia's got the one loss. What do you do with them? So there were things that could have happened to make the committee's life very difficult. One of them, and the biggest one, was going to be Alabama beating Georgia, and that's exactly what happened. Now, I think most of us thought that what the committee would do was put Alabama in the tournament. What they should have done was put Florida State in there. And I don't care what you think. I don't care what your inclination is to have any emotional attachment to what happened with this selection. The fact of the matter is, and we've seen it time and time again, that SEC bias and finances are going to rule the roost. And that's what happened. God forbid you take an Alabama team who had the one loss on its resume to Texas in Tuscaloosa by 10 earlier in the season and leave them out. Now, they had beaten a Georgia team that was riding a 29-game winning streak, back-to-back national champions. I get it. But to leave, for the first time ever, an undefeated Power 5 champion out of a tournament was disgraceful. Because look at this, folks. And I can't believe that it's still this much of a debate. There's nothing you could do about it now. I know Rick Scott down in Florida is trying to get legislation to go after the committee and after college football. It's a waste of time. If you're paying attention solely to strength of record, Alabama wins it. The strength of record was 5. Florida State's was 50 or 55, whatever it was. I don't have it in front of me. What the committee said was that they favor teams who are entering at full strength. Well, what does that mean? So, body of work no longer matters. That's the precedent that the committee is setting here. 13-0. Folks, it doesn't matter how you get the wins as long as you get it done. And I guess that's why so many people prefer the National Football League over college. That there's no style points. There shouldn't be style points anyway. And what they were saying outside of their SEC bias, which yes exists, and I know that'll piss the people off down south, I don't care. You have a Florida State team that did everything right. The body of work was there. Season opening win at a neutral site against LSU. Running the table in conference, winning the conference championship 13-0, and you told them go scratch the regular season, doesn't matter. You don't have your starting quarterback. You're not worthy of getting in the tournament. That's ridiculous. Should the Cincinnati Bengals be eliminated from the NFL playoffs because Joe Burrow's not playing? Should the Jacksonville Jaguars be eliminated from NFL playoff conversation because Trevor Lawrence might be out for extended time after getting hurt last week? Bengals beat the Jaguars last week, by the way, with Jake Browning, the backup to Joe Burrow. Florida State won an ACC tournament with a freshman quarterback who had thrown 4 passes. So don't tell us, and this is where ESPN's insanity really got to me. Don't tell us how heroic the College Football Playoff Committee was by making this decision and wading waters like they were on the front lines at freaking Normandy with guns pointed in their face and dodging incoming fire, like they did something so unbelievably, overwhelmingly. They picked 4 teams. This is a heroic moment in time. You picked 4 teams and you screwed one. And ESPN just gushing over Corrigan. Oh, he puts his heart and soul into making the decision. This man should be lauded and appreciated for everything he's done. The ripple effect from what Corrigan did and his committee, these powers that be, by leaving Florida State out, also had a huge impact on the rest of the bowl slate. But this was a gross decision that really was simple. You've got Power 5 teams all over this. And you might be picking between an SEC champion in Alabama, a 1-loss Georgia team, the Big 12 champion in Texas. I suppose Ohio State is in that mix with the 1 loss. The common denominator should have been there that Ohio State, Texas, Alabama, and then Georgia, after losing to Alabama in the SEC championship game, had 1 loss. Florida State had 0. 0. Their body of work was just as good. Don't give me the strength of record crap. What message are you sending here? Because now we're expanding to 12 a year ago, next year. Are we going to have the same issues fighting between who gets 12 and 13? Yeah, that's going to be a problem. There's nothing you can do about that. But the watered down field to now with the expansion from 4 to 12 is great for next year. You worry about that when you get there. But what's the precedent here? If this happens again, leaving out an undefeated Power 5 team because someone isn't on the field, that's what they're saying. They could say whatever they want about the strength of record, about how the fact of the matter is that this committee was not leaving out an SEC team And they were afraid to put a Florida State team in because of who wasn't ready to play, and that's Jordan Travis, and that's insane. And the constant smacking of the behind of Corrigan and this committee, how much they appreciated his grueling work he and his team did. Oh, they knew they were going to have to face the firing squad, and they came out as the real winners in this. I mean, ESPN, it bothers me that I have to watch the network because they anchor most of the games. It's a disgusting joke, disgrace of a network. It really has become that. And it's sad. They've become more political than anything, and they put their saucy little, watered down, everyone's a hero. Every time you make a tough decision, you're heroic. You have to be put up on a pedestal. And then they want to interview Mike Norvell, the head coach of Florida State, after. Go scratch. Take a hike. Nothing more than an opportunity to jack up ratings. And I'll tell you another thing. If you're worried about selling those ratings for the names on the front of the jerseys and the logo on the helmets, Florida State sells itself. And now under Norvell, they look like they're back. And oh, by the way, since losing Travis, they haven't lost a game. It's money. And it's disgraceful. And there was no defense of it. Despite ESPN's best effort to try to sauce this up and doll this up, this was one of the more egregious things I've seen in sports. And then you get another thing from the mouthpiece of ESPN, Stephen A. Smith. Well, puts out one of the most insane things I've ever read. And I know I've said on my program before, I don't like taking shots at people. It's freaking warranted here. Tweeting out that Florida State, and this is a tweet, you couldn't look it up. Florida State can thank TCU for not getting an invite to the Final Four. What the hell does that mean? This is a man that makes $4 million a year to say crap like this on social media. Now, what he's referencing is the ass kicking TCU took in the national championship game last year against Georgia. Everybody knows it. What was the final score? 63-7, something like that. That was also a TCU team that put it on Michigan in the semifinal and just happened to have the worst game of the season at the utmost worst time. So you can thank TCU for Florida State not getting in the tournament. I mean, this is the type of person ESPN pays to say this crap. You're going for ratings, and the committee probably saw an opportunity to have a potential crack at getting Alabama and Texas back on the field again for a rematch from earlier in the season. Now, don't get me wrong. Alabama-Texas is going to sell itself. It'd be a damn good game. But God, and I'll say it again, God forbid we leave an SEC team out. And here's the other thing that no one's brought up. So Florida State, who going into that final committee vote was fourth. They got bumped to 5 for Alabama, who went from 8-4 with the SEC title game. Florida State, with a third-string quarterback, undefeated record, viewed as no good by the committee. Yet, to go to the Orange Bowl, where they're going to play Georgia, this committee, who knows everything, who knows better than everyone, ranks them higher than a Georgia team who went from 1 to 6. Florida State goes from 4 to 5. So they're not good enough to get into the Final Four, but they're good enough to be ranked over, one spot ahead of, the two-time defending national champion who had a 29-game win streak snapped in a 3-point loss to Alabama in the SEC championship game. I mean, you want to laugh, that's something to make you laugh at. You're not good enough to play, but you're good enough to be ranked ahead of with a third-string quarterback who's only thrown about 15 balls in his career ahead of the two-time defending national champions. And if you really, and I get dirty looks when I say this, I've gotten the inbox on social media, if you really want to break you-know-what, if you really wanted to do the right thing, and if you really, really, really were concerned about the integrity of the game, which again is played by student athletes. Leave Michigan out. Have a pair. This is a program that was wrapped up in two separate cheating scandals, basically proven accurate for the simple fact that their head coach was suspended twice in 1 year. And they're the number one team. Cheating twice, head coach, 2 suspensions in a season. 2 in a season. And you got Desmond Howard defending him a couple weeks ago. They're going after Michigan. Dude, think before you speak. If you really wanted to protect do the right thing, that's what you could have done. No, I know. I'm being a little aggressive there. I'm the get off my lawn guy. I get it. Fine. God forbid we do the right thing, right? God forbid we have integrity and make decisions with our brains instead of our wallets. How dare me? God forbid. But the fact of the matter is that this Florida State team should have been in, fully knowing that Michigan, that was not going to happen. Who do you leave out? I'm sorry. You leave out Alabama. You leave out the SEC champion. And your SEC bias takes a hit for a year because when you expand to 12 teams, you're probably going to get 3 damn teams in the tournament anyway. Because I think LSU would have been 12th this year. So you would have had a good amount of SEC representation, as you should. This year aside, an undefeated Florida State team, yeah, that's what you do, folks. It really, it shouldn't boil down to much more than that. People are afraid to have the Michigan discussion because, oh, by the way, right after they get done licking the you-know-what of Corrigan, who does ESPN bring on? Oh, Jim Harbaugh. Oh, Jim, masterful job navigating the rocky waters that you had to sit out multiple suspensions this year with Michigan to do a hell of a job to get your team 1 win away from playing for a national championship. They don't even broach the subject. They don't even bring it up. I wish I could live in a world where there was there's no freaking accountability in the world as there is. But on a consistent basis, I'd love to get that treatment. Where do I sign up for that? Do whatever you want and have no consequences. That's what college football and their committee, these idiots that make this decision, that's what they told you. We don't care. We want the ratings. We want the SEC branding. And we don't want to piss off anyone down south. SEC bias, folks. It exists, and it was at the detriment of these kids and their head coach at Florida State. An absolute no-brainer to put that team in the Final Four, and they blew it. Just before I came on the air, as a matter of fact, news out of the world of college football, a really good quarterback from Oklahoma, Dillon Gabriel, can sling it, a lefty. Similar, a little bit bigger than Michael Penix. Transferring after entering the portal, he's going to go to Oregon next year. So that's big news. So Oregon's going to go from Bo Nix, who will be a highly sought pick in the upcoming draft in April, to Dillon Gabriel. It's going to be interesting to see this transition with Dan Lanning, who's a head coach that I love, and what he's been able to do and really resurrect this Oregon offense and do it on both sides of the ball. I'd like to see Oregon bolster that secondary. But to have that transition from now Nix to Gabriel is pretty special. You know, I'm not in love with all this NIL stuff in college football, and I think the portal has gotten completely out of control. I am all about marketability for a young student athlete. Obviously, the heavier sports are going to carry more of that weight, right? The basketballs, men's and women's hoop, football, things of that nature. I get it. But I think there was an opportunity to control it better in the beginning, and now it's completely off the rails. It's become free agency. I mean, you heard Matt Rule a couple of weeks ago discussing how you go into the portal and you want to get a good quarterback. Let's use, for example, Sam Hartman, the quarterback at Notre Dame. You want to go a path like that next year, or Riley Leonard will be out there. Gabriel was on the market. Now he's off it. Cam Ward, the really good-looking quarterback from Washington State. These guys are going to be on the market, Matt Rule basically comes out and says, hey, it's going to cost you about $1.50, $2 million for a good portal quarterback. I mean, where are we that this can't be regulated better? You do a commercial, and I'll give you a great for instance. I go out to South Bend with my wife a couple weeks ago for the Notre Dame Wake Forest game. We go into that bookstore and get, we didn't go nuts because I got more Notre Dame shit than I know what to do with. But you saw things that you normally didn't see, and it's player advertising and branding. You got Sam Hartman's face on a shirt, right? You got Audric Estime's got his own, I think it was a sweatshirt line. For those kids, that's great. The income that they're making there, and I think one of the good things that this may allow you to do, in sort of a catch-22 here, is take a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr. He's up for the Heisman Trophy tonight. Heard him this morning on the air. There's the idea that he, and I suppose maybe Caleb Williams, who's going to be a top 2 pick in the draft if he enters, might hang around college for another year. More exposure, more opportunity. You play for that national championship. For Harrison, maybe you get some revenge on Michigan after a couple of losses. Because I don't think the jump now with this NIL stuff to the NFL is all that necessary. Now, is that good or bad? You want these guys as a college football fan, on the college gridirons. But at what cost? I mean, to have to go into the portal, there does have to be that element of the fact that these are still kids. Yes, a lot of them will get legitimate, sound, legal and financial advice / guidance. That will happen. But a lot will not. And that's scary. There's going to be the universities that just look at the kid and see dollar signs. That's scary. I get it. Coming down to the X's and O's and wanting to win football games, let's go into the portal and see what we can get. What does that mean for the development of the guys and the kids that are already on your teams? Just because we were talking about the Final Four, let's focus on a sport like football. What does that mean? What does development look like? What does it do to recruiting? Conventional recruiting. Going out on the road, going into a kid's home, sitting down with his or her parents, and going through the whole spiel, as opposed to just showing up with a blank check. I think you have to be very careful there. I don't hate it, but I do think it's gotten out of control. And I think there has to be a better job, not necessarily just with the NIL stuff, but with this transfer portal. There has to be limitations on it. I said a couple of years ago on a different program that I was doing at the time, and I had said it, matter of fact, right as was following Bill Daughtry on the air, as a matter of fact. You should have a black month or a dark month where these coaches that might be interested in taking the next step can't interview or can't be involved with another program until their season's over. Well, that might cost them an opportunity. Not if you make it clear-cut across the board. Not if you say and I'm just throwing dates, from Thanksgiving to Jan 1 of the new year or until after the national championship ends, you are where you are. Any interviews, you've got placeholders there. You can conduct them after the fact. Can there be something done with the portal? Because already with these bowl games, unless you're playing for a national championship, these top picks aren't going to play. And I get it. But I also have an appreciation for that team aspect and that camaraderie aspect and being there for your teammates when it matters the most. So if you could come up with something there where coaches got to do their due diligence through the season, and then the NIL stuff and the transfer portal stuff picks up when responsibilities to the team that you're currently on have ended, then I'd probably be a little more open door policy with it. But as constituted right now, it's just not working. It's out of control, and it's become money over meaningfulness. And that's scary. And I'm not just saying that as someone who is a teacher. I'm saying it as someone who has an appreciation for what getting that degree and simultaneously being a student athlete means or should mean. there are folks that might value the aspect of a college degree perhaps less than they may have years ago, and that's fine. But you are weaponizing yourself when you have that legitimate degree. Right, wrong, or indifferent, it matters. It means something. And if it's just going to come down to dollars and cents here, which is basically what we saw with this college football committee, that SEC branding, I don't care what they say. You left the Florida State team out because of who they were putting out on the field, ignored their complete body of work, and you went for the big gun in naming. You leapfrogged a couple of teams and moved Alabama up 4 spots because they represent the SEC. And you left out the ACC champion. That involves money, folks. Don't convince yourself otherwise. It's true. I'll always say most of the things, I won't try to convince you one way or the other. You're not going to convince me that I'm wrong here. This came down to money, and that was it. And one team who played their asses off all year got screwed. So with all of that in mind, I really hope they do get this under control. Yes, going into the 12-team expansion, and then yes, on the portal and the NIL fronts. Because if it hasn't completely gotten off the rails yet, it's close. And I think we've started to see that. I think you got a good look at it last year when USC completely revamped its team under Caleb Williams, and then what Colorado did this year with Deion. And I like Deion. Don't get me wrong there. I am a Deion Sanders fan. But you want to make sure that a lot of this can be regulated better and the decision makers can be better, because right now, not good. Mike's on the line. Mike, what's up, man? How are you?
Yeah, hi, Pete. How you doing?
What's going on?
I agree with everything you're saying, and I have one question about Florida State being left off. Do you think it was possible that because their quarterback got hurt and didn't play in the last couple of games, that they were left off because the board didn't think they'd be competitive enough?
And yes, that's part of it. I'm in there with the SEC bias because they'd be deathly afraid of the repercussions because nobody has a spine on this committee, Mike. That's what it comes down to. We've seen it before, just never this bad. But this is also a Florida State team that, without their quarterback, beat a Louisville team that was top 30 in the country in everything, offense and defense. So what that committee said was, hey, we don't care what you did leading up. We only care about who your quarterback is not. Now, what's not to say Jordan Travis comes out in the Final Four, doesn't throw 4 interceptions, Florida State gets blown out anyway. You have no idea. And to do that, it sets a horrible precedent. I do think it was that SEC bias, Mike, but yeah, a huge part of that was the fact it was Jordan Travis, and that's wrong. I mean, I said it before. Should the Jacksonville Jaguars be eliminated from postseason contention because it looks like Trevor Lawrence is going to be out a couple of weeks?
That's right.
It's absurd. If Patrick Mahomes goes down tomorrow or C.J. Stroud goes down at MetLife on Sunday, should the Texans be eliminated because they don't have their quarterback?
Yeah. You got to feel bad for Florida State having an undefeated season.
And now you've got good matchups in this Final Four. I'm not saying that, but the path to getting there, to take a Power 5 champion, and by the way, if you go in wins and losses, Florida State is in that pool. Other than Michigan, they're undefeated.
Wow.
And the committee was saying that they don't care about that either, which to me was disgraceful.
Yep.
So, look, and Mike, I appreciate the call as always. But when you talk about wins and losses, again, in the NFL, there's no style points. You win or you lose. You know, that's why you'll see in college football, they'll schedule a layup, right? Alabama will schedule, Chattanooga or, Delaware State and just lay the wood to them to jack up the style points. So you're battling that also. But to send that message that you don't care about wins and losses, just who's on the field at that moment, and yes, the dollars and cents from SEC Nation, it's a problem that I really hope gets fixed, because what Boo Corrigan and that committee did, and then ESPN just slapping them on the back and saying, hey, boys, job well done, can't continue, especially going into expansion, which was needed. You need the 12-team field. I even lobbied for 16 like the FCS does because I think it's a great tournament, but 12 is fine. You're rocking and rolling with 12. You got 4 this year. New Year's Day, Rose Bowl, 5 p.m., Sugar Bowl, 8:45. Michigan's in the Rose Bowl against Alabama, Washington, Texas in the Sugar Bowl. You got 4 teams, just got the wrong 4 teams. And it's sad, and it's something that absolutely needs to be corrected. And hopefully moving forward, this is something that does get corrected.
I'm Sensei Felicia.
I'm Sensei Mike Karim, and we are the owners and instructors of Dento Tekina, Judo, Jiu-Jitsu, and MMA Dojo on Victory Boulevard in Staten Island, New York.
If you're looking to improve or refocus your overall physical and mental health, come join us on the mat, where we offer a variety of classes from ages 4 and up for all experience levels.
Whether you're interested in self-defense, learning the traditional Japanese fighting methods of Judo and Jiu-Jitsu, or taking our MMA conditioning courses, we have what you need to take your training methods to the next level. So come join us at Dento Tekina, Judo, Jiu-Jitsu, and MMA Dojo on Staten Island.
Yeah, again, big thanks to our sponsors out here locally on Staten Island for backing us up. The Dento Tekina Judo Jiu-Jitsu Dojo, they do a great job week in and week out of covering all of New York City. HIIT training classes, interval training, everything they have over there at Victory Boulevard. It's great, and we want to thank them for sponsoring the show as well. So transitioning from college football and all of the chaos that had taken place leading into today's Army-Navy game and then bowl season. The bowl season starts a week from today on the 16th. We'll start breaking those games down as we go. And just quick programming scheduling the next couple of weeks due to some outside events. I believe I'm going to be hosting the show on Thursday the next couple of weeks. I will be sure to update all the social media boards and everything as I know, as availability, on-air availability becomes known to me. I will fill you in. But for now, we're into week 14. And, one of the themes that I had put out here in my teaser tweets and posts was the fact that the San Francisco 49ers have been rolling, especially the last month. Their last 4 wins would be impressive no matter what. But then you add into the fact that they've got 4 straight wins over teams that are in the playoff race, and it becomes even more impressive. 34-3 over Jacksonville. I mean, that was a beatdown. 2-touchdown win over Tampa Bay. Hammering Seattle on the road Thanksgiving. And then putting it on Philly last week, 42-19. Look, I said last week, and I was pretty clear, I believed last week the Philadelphia Eagles to win the Super Bowl, but I picked San Francisco in the game. And you can do that. I didn't think San Fran. Now, Philly had a grueling stretch in their own right, and they were winning games. Overtime victory over Buffalo the week before at home. I get it. The Philly team's damn good. They just ran into a freight train in San Francisco. And I said that a couple times, and I've got them right there, that I believe the Eagles to be the Super Bowl favorites. But, after looking at that, yes, even with a tired Philly team, I think San Francisco wins that game at full strength regardless. At this moment, how can you not like them to be the favorite? Now, anything can happen, but I think my tune's changing a little bit. But you've got the Eagles, Dallas, Baltimore, Miami, San Francisco. They're all in that conversation. Right? These are teams that are certainly right there. I mean, you talk about the MVP race. Brock Purdy should be getting a little more love than he is. I mean, Hurts is there. Dak Prescott might be the leader in the clubhouse, and Tyreek Hill from the non-quarterback spot. Now Mahomes will get his, and you can't dismiss them from Super Bowl talk because they still have the weaponry. I guess you'd want to see more consistency from the wide receiver core in Kansas City, but you can't just poo-poo them. So you're going to have interest going into the last 4 weeks of this NFL season, and it's going to be fun. The other thing that's interesting as we take a look at this NFL playoff picture is you've got the Pittsburgh Steelers, and this Pittsburgh team has got to be super frustrating for the fan base. 2 straight losses to drop into 7-6, and not really conventional losses. It's 2 consecutive losses to 2-win teams in Arizona and New England. And what that did was really open the wild card race in the AFC for teams like the Browns, who are now a half game ahead of Pittsburgh in the AFC North. The Colts are also 7-5. The Texans 7-5 with a game this weekend against the Jets. Broncos Bengals at 6-6. I guess you can't eliminate the Bengals after they just beat Jacksonville. And then the Bills, monster uphill climb at 6-6 also. But with that loss Thursday night to the Patriots, where Bailey Zappi, who couldn't hit the ocean if he was wading in it, throws 3 touchdown passes, that dropped, as of today, Pittsburgh out of the playoff race. They're the first team out if it started today. So you look at the league right now, going into this weekend. We've had the Thursday night game. Steelers lose to the Pats. So the week's underway. I'll get into my picks in a minute, but yeah, I went with the Steelers in that one. I didn't think they were going to do it 2 weeks in a row. According to the numbers, 97% of the CBS pickers were wrong. So you got Miami in the 1 spot in a virtual tie with Baltimore, but they have that tiebreaker there. Miami gets the Titans this week. Baltimore gets the Rams. Then you got the Chiefs and Jags at 3-4. Jaguars hot and cold, and they've got a big one against Cleveland, who's 5th right now. The Colts and Texans, 6th and 7th. The Colts get the Bengals. Big game there for both. And then the Jets get the Texans. The Texans right now would be the last team in, with Pittsburgh, Denver, and Cincinnati right behind them with Buffalo. You go over and look at the NFC. It's tight as well, because right now you've got Philly at the top, a game over San Fran. Philly's got Dallas this week in Big D. 49ers host the Seahawks. Lions and Falcons at 3 and 4. Cowboys, Vikings, Packers are your wild card teams right now at 5, 6, and 7. In the hunt, and it's interesting, are the Seahawks at 6 and 6, the Rams at 6 and 6, Vikings and Saints at 5 and 7 are a game back, and believe it or not, and I can't even believe I'm saying this, the New York Giants are 2 games back, and they play Green Bay this weekend. Monday night. I mean, this is what you get this time of the year. And Saquon Barkley, again, last night said, it has been a wild season, but despite all of this crap, Tyrod Taylor returning this week, but Tommy DeVito still going to get the start for the Giants against Green Bay. This is a Green Bay team that has looked really good. Jordan Love coming into his own after being a backup to Aaron Rodgers the last couple of years, wins on the road Thanksgiving against Detroit, and then picking up the huge win against Kansas City. I mean, this is Green Bay. Now, you're talking about this Packer team amongst the hottest teams in the league. But with 2 games out, I guess the Giants aren't going anywhere, folks. But is it nice to at least have the ability this Monday night to sit down and say, hey, you know what? Yeah, like it or lump it, this game matters. They're not out of it. And that's the bottom line. So when you look at the slate this week, and I'll go through this week's picks for week 14. All right, I said 97% of the people went with Pittsburgh. It was 95. We were all wrong. Pats get the win on Thursday night. Saints hosting Carolina. This is a Carolina team. I think Bryce Young, I said this last week and the week before, I think he's getting a bulk of the negativity. I do think there is development there, but this is just a bad Carolina team. Even if the Saints come out sluggish, I just can't see them losing this game at home, especially with them still being in this playoff race, because as constituted right now, 3rd in the NFC South. Yeah, they're a game out of the wild card race, but they're right behind Atlanta at 5 and 7, with the Falcons atop the spot in the South at 6 and 6. So this is a big game for the Saints. I think they get it done. Lions go to Chicago. Look, with Fields back and the Chicago offense, this is a team that's a little snake bit. They're 4-8 there. I guess you're not totally dismissive of them. Chicago, like the Giants, have some games on their schedule from earlier that are in the loss column because of self-inflicted wounds. So it might be a different conversation we're having if things go differently. I just like Detroit on the road this week to get it done. Houston is at the Jets. There's no way. And the big news this week, and there was a lot of nonsense circulating out of Jets camp this week with, Zach Wilson being approached about being anointed or re-anointed the starting quarterback and saying, hey, basically, F you. I never bought that for a second that was the case. I thought it was absurd when it was floated out, which I think, oddly enough, that report came from ESPN, who I have not been kind to today for obvious reasons, and I think deservedly so. I never bought it for a minute. Rob Saleh said the thing that makes me scratch my head is I don't think the Jets are going to win the game regardless of who is under center. I like Houston in this game. Zach Wilson gives us the best chance to win. It came out of the mouth of Rob Saleh. So now he gives you the best chance to win. The last couple of weeks he didn't with Tim Boyle. I mean, I understand some of the vitriol that the Jet fan base had towards Zach Wilson, and a lot of it is understandable because the fact of the matter is he's not very good. He has not played well. He is not the answer. He is a huge part of the problem. To go back in this spot is interesting, specifically because it is a home game. I mean, if Wilson goes out there and the bed, the stadium's going to get raucous, and it could be problematic on many levels, as you probably have to think. Rob Saleh's seat is getting hotter and hotter by the day with each passing loss. So, yeah, give me Houston in this one. I don't think Houston's going to go in there and beat the crap out of them, but I do think they will walk out of there comfortably and at least hold on to that playoff spot for another couple weeks. They've been a fun story, the Texans, with C.J. Stroud, who's played really, really, really well, probably the front runner for Rookie of the Year, at least he should be. So give me the Texans over the Jets Sunday. Indianapolis goes to Cincy. I probably would have looked at this before Cincinnati's win led by Jake Browning over Jacksonville last week and said, hey, let's go Colts on the road in that spot. The Colts right now, the 6th team in the playoffs if it started today. I liked what I saw from that Cincinnati team, the way they can get after it defensively in spots. And then with Browning, when you give him the opportunity to get the ball to his playmakers, i.e. Mixon and Chase, I think that was, especially with Jamar Chase with the 77-yard touchdown you heard in the open. Yeah, I think Cincinnati's got the potential to do some things here. Now, they, like Buffalo, have got a big uphill climb here to get into this playoff picture, but they can do themselves some major, major justice by getting to 7-6 and knocking off the Colts at home. And I think they'll do that this Sunday. Cleveland hosts Jacksonville. Lawrence out. It doesn't look good. The timeline on that isn't overwhelmingly positive. So give me Cleveland here with their defense. Cleveland's still up in the air, whether it's going to be DTR or Joe Flacco under center. And by the way, I know it's not ideal, but if you watch him throw the ball, Joe Flacco's still got a freaking cannon. The guy can still get it down the field. It's actually very impressive. So this is a good story. I think not the situation Cleveland fans thought they'd be in, especially with Deshaun Watson. But right now, hey, Cleveland, you're in. If the playoffs started today, at 7-5, you get a win, you go to 8-5. I think Cleveland gets it done over Jacksonville in one of the bigger games of the weekend. Baltimore hosts the Rams, and you're not dismissive of L.A. on the outside looking in here, a game out of the playoffs at 6-6, losing a tiebreaker right now to Green Bay and Minnesota. I just can't see the Rams going to Baltimore and knocking off this Ravens team who continues to contend with Miami for the top spot in the AFC. So give me the Ravens. Tampa goes to Atlanta. I like Atlanta there. I just think they're a better team. I'm not reliant in crunch time where I have to sit back and say, okay, Baker Mayfield, go get me the W. No, it's terrifying to me. Give me Atlanta. I know Ritter hasn't been all that spectacular, and he's turnover prone, but I am going Atlanta at home to get another win over Tampa. Vegas hosts Minnesota. It's interesting here because this is a Minnesota team. Again, they're the 6th seed right now, so they'd be in the tournament if it started today. And the Raiders have fallen out of this thing a little bit at 5-7, 2 games out in that stacked AFC. I think we all really fell in love with Joshua Dobbs a little harder than we probably should have. I think we like the way, almost looking at someone from a distance and you get excited, and then you see poor play last week in a really bad loss for Minnesota. I'm gonna go Vegas here at home. I think it's close, but I think the Raiders get it done. San Fran hosts Seattle. I think they're gonna pound them. I think this will be win five in a row for San Francisco as they continue to roll and play for that top spot in the NFC, which is significant, especially if Dallas beats Philadelphia this weekend. Kansas City hosts Buffalo. Uh, this is big. This is usually a great matchup. Good quarterback play, obviously, with Patty Mahomes and Josh Allen. You just wonder how much this Buffalo defense is going to be able to put forward against Kansas City. And it's a Kansas City offense that comes in limping a little bit. So they've got the weaponry there if they're able to use it, obviously, with Kelsey from Mahomes. Rashee Rice on the outside has really grown into that number one receiver that Mahomes wants and needs, especially with the dropsies that we've seen Kansas City. MVS can still get up and down the field. I'm going to go Kansas City here, and this loss for Buffalo, this could be the nail in the coffin as far as the playoff race is concerned. Am I shocked if Buffalo goes in there and wins the game? Absolutely not, especially after Green Bay just did it with Jordan Love. But I like Kansas City here in a close, fun game in another huge game of the week. Chargers hosting Denver. All right, it might not be pretty, but I'll take Denver there. And then you got Philly and Dallas, the Sunday night game. Dallas at home after losing a close one a couple of weeks ago on the road in Philly. They are the favorite. They should be the favorite. Philly getting away from home, a reset after taking an ass kicking to San Francisco last week. I'll go Eagles here. I think they get back on track. I would expect that you get a good performance from Dak and you get a good performance from Jalen. I think this will come down to which one of these teams can feature their run better. If that's getting both quarterbacks on the move, you see that more with Hurts. Designed runs, I should say, with Hurts as opposed to Dak, who's very mobile in his own right. Who can get that ground game going and create that pressure up front? Whoever does that the best wins the game. I think that'll be Philly this week. But I think it's close, and I think it's going to be a damn good game. You get 2 Monday night games this week. Green Bay goes to the Giants, and Tennessee goes to Miami. Miami's a monster favorite in this game, and outside of the quarterback position, Tyreek Hill is probably numero uno in the MVP race for a non-quarterback. I mean, he's been magnificent. If anybody's got him on his fantasy team, you're probably at the top or near the top of your league and probably going to the playoffs. The fantasy playoffs, I believe, start next week as it is anyway. Miami all over this one. I just don't think Tennessee is going to have the ability at 4-8 to run anywhere near the team speed. Devon Achane is back in the backfield for Miami now, and he's a game changer. He's a game breaker, and between him and Mostert out of that backfield, with the way Tua has played, who should also be in the MVP convo, Miami big. Pick wise with the Giants as a 7-point dog in this one. I'll do it to myself just so I can sit there and have some sense of a positive rooting interest because you all know me by now. I am a miserable person to watch Giant football games with, and I'll take the Giants here. Come on, why not, right? Because here's what's going to happen. The Giants will win Monday night. That'll push them to 5-8. They would have beaten a Green Bay team. 6-7 would drop their record. Seattle is not going to beat San Francisco, I don't think. I don't think the Rams are going to beat the Ravens. And I don't think the Falcons are going to lose to Tampa Bay. So you would have the Giants now a game out of this entire thing if they're able to beat Green Bay at home. You'll get the Giants to win. They'll hang around for a couple of weeks, and I'll sit down and watch them play the Eagles with playoff potential on the line, and the Giants will get absolutely steamrolled. That's what's going to happen. I'm almost looking forward to it. So, yeah, with 7% of the CBS Sportline folks picking the Giants, I'll be one of the 7% in this one. So the Monday night games, give me the Giants, who I haven't picked in a serious game in a while. The laughable games against Washington and the Patriots. I thought the Giants would win, and they did. And, hey, by the way, I guess there's probably no long term here, and I think we would all agree with that with Tommy DeVito. But the fact of the matter is that when they let him throw the ball, he's successful. He holds on to the ball probably too long. I think the offensive line for the Giants has done a much better job. Now, you'll look at that and say, a couple weeks ago, 9 sacks. 5 of those, or 6 of them probably, I think you could attribute to the fact that DeVito was new at this, was thrown into this, hanging on to the football too long. And I think the rapport that he's starting to build there, maybe with an Isaiah Hodgins and Jalen Hyatt, the good-looking receiver who the Giants drafted early, I think they're for the now, for the right now. Yeah, I think it's a good decision to ride this wave with Tommy DeVito. Now you have a Tyrod Taylor potentially if needed. I think it's been a fun story. I think it's great. Certainly a local kid from New Jersey. Those who listen to the show, many of them from my part here in the Northeast and New York, New Jersey area anyway. So it's really, really been a fun story. And I give me the Giants over Green Bay, which would be an impressive win for the Giants, especially when you think about what Green Bay has done the past couple of weeks with wins over lately, Kansas City and the Detroit Lions on Thanksgiving. So that's week 14. It should be a good one. And I think you would expect a lot of jockeying and positioning to take place this week with another good slate of NFL gridiron action.
Hit subscribe and don't miss the next episode.
Sports Today with Peter J.
Yeah, by now you all know how to subscribe. And look, subscriptions have gone up specifically as it relates to Spotify. And I really, really love that. Apple's done a much better job as well lately. So those of you who listen live, that's great. But the bulk of it comes right at post-production, right? Tape delay. So I really appreciate the downloads for those of you who have been loyalists and those of you who email me and reach out on a weekly basis. I do appreciate it. So just before we wrap, obviously the MLB Winter Meetings came to a close on Thursday. It's a good time of the year. And what I really want to do, and I want to put this out there to a lot of the folks that listen, I want to put a trip together one year to go out to these winter meetings because you don't just go there and stand around and watch these guys stare at each other and sign contracts. It doesn't work that way. There's different classes that you can attend about the intricacies of Major League Baseball. As a former employee of MLB, I have an appreciation for how difficult those things can be. I think it'd be a fun, little experience to go out and learn, some of this back channel stuff that happens with how do we make these phone calls? How do we get these guys in the room? What do we do? Let's for an example, everything that's taking place with Yoshinobu Yamamoto, the 25-year-old pitcher from Japan. What goes on to get the ball rolling when all these guys get together and meet at the winter meetings? I think that would be a fun trip to make, and I'd be interested to see if anybody's been. Let me know what your experience was like. At PeterJM on Twitter, and obviously you all have my email address, PeteMulroy@hotmail.com. That's my personal email address. You can send me messages at any time, or right through many of the platforms as well. But I'd be curious to know if anybody's made that trip before, because it is something that I would definitely like to do for a couple days and check this out. So you go to the winter meetings, and for those of you who may not have seen it, yesterday was wild on the rumor mill, and it really only revolved around one guy, and that was Shohei Ohtani. It does not appear that he's going back to the Angels, but the rumor mill would have had you believe that he had signed with the Toronto Blue Jays yesterday. And when I say yesterday, I'm referencing Friday, December 8th. Legitimate outlets had him on a plane going to Toronto to ink that contract. This went on all day. But you never got that alert that it was finalized because it was false reporting. Done on purpose or not, it was false reporting. Now, Toronto's in the mix, and adding Ohtani into a lineup with Vlad, etc., would be phenomenal. Bichette and company. But no deal's been made. They're a finalist. And the reports of him being on a plane going to Canada. On Friday night, Ohtani was on the west coast of the United States, not flying to Canada. So that is going to be something to keep an eye on, obviously. This guy markets himself. If he goes up to Canada, he's the face of a nation, which would be pretty unique for a two-way player. Now, he's only going to DH next year with the injury to the pitching arm. but it's really going to be something worth watching moving forward because, quite honestly, folks, Mike Trout's phenomenal. Aaron Judge is phenomenal. You name it. We haven't seen a player like this. I mean, this guy by himself is worth the price of admission wherever he signs. Personally, finances aside, if they could swing it, I think the San Francisco Giants make a ton of sense. And I guess you can't dismiss a return to the Angels, though I don't think that's going to happen. But the biggest news outside of the winter meetings, yes, Craig Kimbrell going to Baltimore. Luis Severino signs with the Mets. Those are both one-year deals worth $13 million. So significant moves for both of those teams. But it was the trade between the Yankees and the Padres that brings Juan Soto to New York for a slew of young players, headlined by reliever turned starter Michael King, who's tough to lose, Johnny Brito, and Randy Vasquez from the Yankees, who really showed promising stuff last season and should make an impact on a San Francisco team that could use the pitching. Now, the interesting thing here for the Yankees is many want to know if it's a rental when Soto hits free agency next year. I think you saw this with Giancarlo Stanton a few years ago. Yankees don't let guys like this get away. Soto's 25 years old in that stadium with his swing and his ability. From an offensive perspective, Juan Soto's a fit anywhere. He's a perfect fit in the Bronx. And I don't just say that as a Yankee fan. You're talking somewhere north of $500 million, probably 7-8 years, because that would put him into his age 31, 32 season, which would get him another contract. The Yankees will go that route. He'll get extended. And the other significant thing was the Yankees landing Alex Verdugo from the Red Sox. Greg Wiesert, the young reliever, was one of the players involved in that trade going to Boston. So it's expected now that you'll basically have, outside of Aaron Judge, a brand new outfield in New York. Verdugo would play left. Judge will be in center. And Juan Soto will play right. Now, Soto, Verdugo, interchangeable in the corners, I suppose. And I know that Juan Soto is not known for his glove. Trent Grisham came over in that deal, two-time Gold Glover. He'll be able to spell Aaron Judge in center field unless they flip him for some arms. Because the Yankees are still going to need rotation help behind Garrett Cole and Nestor Cortez. I think we all know that. Carlos Rodon was uninspiring through an injury-riddled campaign. King, Vasquez, and Brito are now gone, part of the Soto deal. That reunion with Frankie Montas, you're asking me, it's not going to happen. Bringing back Jordan Montgomery, sure. Yamamoto, he's supposed to meet with the Yankees on December 11th, which is this coming Monday. That would give you another 25-year-old. And I think between Yamamoto and Soto, as opposed for landing the big fish in Ohtani, fills the two needs that the Yankees need, and they'd both be 25 years old. So that would be significant. That would be a job well done if you're able to bring Yamamoto to the Bronx. But now you look at this Yankee lineup, what it could potentially look like, at least in my view, and you can get creative with it, I suppose. You probably have DJ LeMahieu leading off playing third. I think Soto bats second in right, and Aaron Judge in center would hit third. Other people might flip that around for Soto to protect Judge. I think you have Judge third, an opportunity to drive some guys in later in games behind Soto, and you can probably DH Anthony Rizzo, assuming, and Rizzo obviously playing first base, that there's a bounce back, because Anthony Rizzo had the worst year of his career offensively a year ago. Stanton will probably bat fifth. He'll be your DH, your primary DH. They'll put him in the outfield, I suppose, at times because he likes playing right field, and he's an above-average defender as well. Doesn't get the credit there, but he's a well above-average defender. Torres is your second baseman. Now, trade piece, possibly, because Oswald Peraza is not going to supplant Anthony Volpe at short. But he could very well earn that second base job if the Yankees move on from Gleyber Torres, who was their best offensive player a year ago. It's not out of the question. Verdugo, I think, bats seventh. Now, the 8 and 9 spot, you got your catcher in Volpe. Volpe probably will bat ninth. I think it makes sense because then you could potentially get the 9-1-2 later in the game. You got Austin Wells and Jose Trevino. Trevino coming back from injury. And Wells looked pretty damn good in spots last year. He can swing a bat. which is what the Yankees need. They needed life in this offense. They'll come back with a solid bullpen, and these are things that we can continue to break down as the season goes on because we just got out of the winter meetings. A lot more is going to happen with the big fish still being Ohtani. But the Yankees have work to do there. But they've started to do it. And you're going to have to spend money, but it's the intelligent aspect of the Yankees. Hey, we're not reinventing the wheel here. We don't know. And I'm predicting that they re-sign Soto. I think it's going to happen. But you can't eliminate the idea that you don't. So you're not going to give up the world. Sting to get rid of Michael King, sure. But I think you're okay there. And I think a lot of this looks better. And some people will say, or the pessimists will say, it's Stanton all over again. Well, when Giancarlo Stanton's on, he's pretty damn good. And I know it's been underwhelming. And so does Giancarlo Stanton, by the way. So I think we've got a path here, an idea of what the Yankees want to do. And I think we'll start to see things start to develop, as we continue down this winter. Which obviously there'll be so much more to talk about with MLB, the offseason rumor mill, obviously with college basketball. I mean, you're looking at teams like Houston, Arizona, UConn. Tennessee's opening schedule has been grueling, but I think they're ready come tournament time. Zach Edey might be the best player in the country for Purdue. And then obviously Kansas. Marquette's a very good team. I think this BYU team that nobody seems to be talking about is very good. And I like Miami. And I like what Miami brings to the table this year. South Carolina's off to a good start as well. I think there's a lot going on in college basketball, and we're going to have plenty of time for it. You got the in-season tournament in the NBA, and the NHL has really taken off the first couple of weeks to start the season. So we've got a lot to discuss. We'll start to get into it. I'm lining up guests that'll come on. My buddy Bruce Shine in a couple of weeks, hopefully, and some of our friends from over at the NFL and hopefully Major League Baseball in the coming weeks. I'm going to let you all know about programming in the coming weeks because I've got some school events, dinner events, wedding events coming up that interfere with the Friday slate. So I will let you know next week. It looks like I'm going to be hosting Thursday the 15th. Well, that would be Thursday the 14th. I apologize. Instead of the usual Friday slot, I will put that out on socials so you all know what's going on. As far as today's concerned, thanks as always, folks, for tuning in to the special Saturday edition of Sports Today with Peter J. And obviously a huge thanks to our sponsors at New York City's Dento Tekina, Judo Jiu-Jitsu, and MMA Dojo. We appreciate the loyalty and the sponsorship. Have a great weekend, everyone. As always, go Irish. And for this weekend, go Navy. Beat Army. Have a good one, folks. I'll talk to you next week.
Listen to Sports Today with Peter J. every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern on Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. We'll see you there.